Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the end of week edition of our GAI Insights Gen AI news briefing. We have Adam, we have Amanda, we have Ankaj, and we are ready to share with you 6 articles today about our favorite topic. We've got a couple of research papers, one from OpenAI. They're working on helping us with interpretability of LLMs. We've got an article from Ethan Malick's newsletter, and we have a French retailer that gives us a little quick blurb about how they're using generative AI and a few more pieces. So let us dive in. I will bring our screen to the stage. Get us started, Ankaj.
Thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today comes from OpenAI, and they have introduced the extraction concept from GPT-4. So they have decomposed GPT-4's internal representations into 16 million interpretable patterns. So this comes on the lines of Anthropic doing something similar a few weeks back.
Yes, and from the perspective of someone who works on thought leadership and reports for a lot of AI companies and others, I appreciated that they tried to give us some visuals on this. There's some interactive functions where you can actually play with what they've done. But Adam, what do we think about the actual importance level of this for the AI leader?
I'd consider this optional news. It is research. It's important research. It's going to help with AI safety because the reality is, for a lot of what these things can do is emergent properties, and we don't really understand still how they're working and how their own brain per se or their own neural networks are functioning. So this is starting to help us to identify the patterns, to in some ways map the neural activity within the models. But it is research, and like I said, it'll help with things like understanding the behaviors that are going on within them. And from a safety perspective, it's important work, but I consider it optional news.
All right, Amanda, any thoughts?
So when I was skimming it now as well, I feel like it's a little technical. I feel like it's going into a little bit about autoencoders, a few different concepts in there, but I feel like you almost need to have a little bit of a background. So I think just by me sort of looking this over this morning as well, I don't know if it's completely relevant for our audience, just because, again, first of all, to Adam's point about it being research, but second of all, it might be a little bit technical if you don't have some technical background in some of these concepts. So I think I'm on optional team as well.
I hear you. Well, our audience is, we have a large audience, although we try to rate these for the AI leader. So they may have some background, but I tend to agree that I'm not sure this is of note, that there's some progress in this area. If you actually play with the tool that they have there, so you could they've visualized beyond this, there's actually you could go into it and they visualize the analysis of text to kind of show where it lights up. And there's no logic to it. When you look at it, it's like lighting up the word and, it's not really like super enlightening. So you can't even take a quick peek at it and get anything out of it. So, of note that there's progress. Good that OpenAI is working on it. We'll note that in the newsletter, but definitely agree, optional. No need to read this one. Keep us going to the next one, Ankaj. You might be on mute. I will unmute you.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah. So the next article is part of a series of articles that we have been discussing this week. So this is part 3 of that article. So what a few people who have been implementing LLMs for the past year or so, what they have learned from it, and this talks about the strategy part of it.
Yeah, so I enjoyed this read. I think there's some information in there that's well known, but I thought there were several good nuggets in there. that we could have a conversation now about, probably for the entire briefing. And Adam, what did you think about it?
So look, the last two articles, this is the third of a three-part series. The first one I think was tactics, second one was operations, and this is strategy. We consider tactics important, almost optional. The operations definitely important, and I would say this is important, erring on essential. But I think I'm still in the important camp unless someone wants to talk it up. It gives a really good playbook, and I think for the enterprise leader of those three categories, the strategy is really the one that's going to be most relevant to them, and the most important for them to pay attention to. I'll probably press pause there. Like you said, we could get into a lot of the specifics of the playbook and what it suggests from a strategic perspective, but generally speaking, I'd just say that it's at least an important read.
Yeah, there were a lot of nuggets. I actually wrote a bunch of them down to refer to later and use in some of my conversations with organizations. One of the heartening, I guess, points that they made was, we keep hearing people say, look, keep humans in the loop, make sure that you're building these products with humans being augmented. A lot of times I feel like it sounds like people are just saying that because they don't want to admit that they're trying to automate the heck out of things and actually remove humans. Whereas I thought they made a nice argument for keeping humans in the loop that goes beyond just it's the right thing to do. They talk about how if you design products specifically with augmentation in mind, it's going to actually drive you to build different products than competitors that are trying to automate. And they're actually, what they're finding as they're implementing is those are the better products. So a lot of nuggets like that in there. Honestly, I'm going to elevate this one to essential. I know we called the previous two only important, but given you are the AI leader, you are in charge of strategy. And since this is the strategy edition, I feel like, it's Friday, the weekend's coming up. Give this one a read. Essential. Gavel comes down. Okay, Ankash, what do you have next? And actually, I have some support in what I said. I'll show Lucinda, one of our faithful viewers, agrees that this has been a great series of content. So kudos for O'Reilly for finding that author crew and publishing that series. It really was a good one.
Okay.
Sorry, Akash.
Yeah. So the next one that we have is a research paper, and it talks about how LLMs achieve adult human performance on higher order theory of mind tasks.
Okay, our second piece of research here. I'll just open the floor. Who had a strong feeling about it? You can go first. No strong feelings. I see Adam coming off mute.
I mean, it was research. It was interesting. I consider it optional. I didn't really look too closely at it, honestly. I wasn't on the docket to review it, and John, who isn't here, was. But yeah, generally speaking, I just find most of the research that comes out of this organization to be an optional read. It's more for the people that are actually in the woods building these things, or in the weeds, I guess, than an AI leader.
Yes, I think we're going to mark this one optional and move on. Honestly, I hadn't spent a ton of time with it. I had ChatGPT summarize it for me, and just based on that summary, I didn't find that it was something that someone's going to have to spend some time on. I'd much rather have them read the O'Reilly article and, frankly, that whole series this weekend. And I will probably note in the newsletter the previous two editions and direct people to that as probably the best weekend read that they can do. Team optional, we've got some corroboration from our audience as well. So we will move on to the next one. Ankaj.
Yes, so the next one comes from Ethan Mollick, and he has given his 6 monthly edition on doing stuff with AI.
Yeah, so I'm an Ethan Mollick fan, and I know the last time one of his pieces came up, I said the same thing I'm going to say right now, unfortunately, which is I don't feel like this particular piece of work from him is necessarily one that you need to read unless you are really unfamiliar with what the frontier models can do. Gives them some advice on which one does better at particular things, whether it be summarization or image generation, etc. It's really a 101 type of article that I don't think our AI leader is going to need to look. So I would vote for optional, but I'm curious to hear what you both thought.
So I'm gonna challenge you, David, because I really like this one only because I feel like so many of the articles we pull up and what my comment from earlier was, things are constantly, I feel like, pretty technical. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of leaders in this space. I think we're probably pretty divided. I guess I should take that back. There is quite a few technical leaders in the space, but there's also a ton of non-technical leaders that have been managing teams for years. And I think this read is very easy to understand. And so that's why I loved it for the leader, because I feel like they can just kind of breeze through this and say, okay, these are some of the things that are coming out. I like the chart. That chart is so easy to read. It's just like very layman's terms. So I feel like for the leader, it's very digestible. So that's why I liked this one and thought it was important, because I think it's an easy read for them that they could say, oh, okay, now I kind of see what's going on here and kind of read through it. Whereas some of the other articles we pull up, like I said, there is some technical pieces and I feel like they're going to be like, what's an autoencoder? Oh, what's this? I got to take time. I got to research. What the hell is this stuff? So I like that this was digestible. But anyway, that's why I thought this was important. But yes, I can be talked down to optional. So Adam, you're probably going to be our divider here.
It's interesting, Amanda, because I think you're out there speaking to a broader audience. I'm more focused within a specific organization, right? So I don't have that broader perspective, and it's a good one to hear and to be reminded about. My thought was, if you're an AI leader and the stuff in this article is news to you, you're in big trouble, right? And which is why I thought it was probably optional. But the reality is, there are probably a lot of them that are in big trouble and they don't want to admit it. And a lot of stuff is getting thrown at them, and it is jargon, and they don't understand it. So you make a really good point. This is very easy to read. It does provide a very broad, general overview of the capabilities of these things. My initial vote was this is optional because it's stuff I would expect them to already know, and it wouldn't be a good use of their time. They're not going to get much more that's new out of it. But maybe it's it's either optional or it's essential, depending on whether or not you know it. So
right, exactly. As we're talking, I'm envisioning what I might write in the newsletter, which is optional unless you have been faking it until you make it as an AI leader and not actually.
In which case, this is essential read.
Yeah, and not actually playing with the frontier models and understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each and what they can do, which I have to say, Amanda, I agree. There are folks that I'm talking to that are in leadership positions that, know a ton about AI, but they haven't really spent a lot of time with these tools. And that is something, Ethan pushes, right, in every one of his newsletters. And it's completely, I agree with it 100%. If you're not playing with these, you really can't, as a leader, understand what they're capable of, and playing with the frontier models, right? If you're playing with anything less, you're really just not going to understand how you can put this into your organization effectively. So what I'm going to do in the newsletter, I'm going to say, as I said, optional unless, and then
I'm going to vote important. I think Amanda's convinced me. So I don't know if you want to be democratic, but it's 2 against 1 now, David.
Okay,
I'm also looking at the comments from Michael and Dr. Julie and Lucinda, and a lot of people are talking about not underestimating the importance of getting this kind of education out to the AI leaders. So,
yeah, so she's in agreement. Those without deep knowledge, and Lucinda also feeling that it makes a great primer. Okay, I'm going to say important, but I'm going to discuss how they really should know this already. So we'll go there. A little bit of a compromise in our newsletter. All right, great discussion on that one, guys. Thank you. Ankaj, what do we have next?
Okay, so the next one is based on a study which has found that AI models hold opposing views on controversial topics.
Okay. And as the article notes, this isn't necessarily a surprise, right? We've been talking about the bias in models for a long time, but this actually crystallizes it, right? And shows you examples of how that's actually playing out. So to me, I felt like this was important just because we keep, again, much like I said with one of my earlier comments, a lot of times we hear leaders talking the talk. Yes, we need to mitigate for bias. Yes, we need to ensure that we're keeping the human in the loop and we're augmenting and not replacing. But it feels disingenuous to me sometimes. And I feel like this article gives you a look at what that bias looks like, because it can be somewhat subtle, right? And I think that seeing is believing, right? And might give you a better idea of how you have to think about these in the organization. And for that reason, I'm going to throw out important to start. And as usual, we'll be open to disagreement and be democratic. We have 3 today, so it makes it easy. We get to have a clear majority on the articles. What do you think, Amanda?
So one thing that jumped out to me that I was just looking at is about the chatbot in there. Did you see that part about the Chinese government? And then it basically said it couldn't answer the question. So something ironic. I'm doing an internship kind of working backwards with US CENTCOM. And I was reviewing some of the different terrorist and different organizations. And I was on Copilot and I was in Bing. And it actually told me that it couldn't dive into that topic. I've seen that too. And I found that interesting because I haven't really noticed that. ChatGPT is pretty much my go-to when I'm summarizing and things like that. So I found that interesting. So I think that in itself is interesting because we also have some of these models that are on the camp, I'm just not going to go there. So I think that's interesting as well. And when we see that, what do we do? So for that, I think that was an interesting point. So I could be across the board on this from important to optional. Yeah, Adam, you might be our decider again.
Yeah, sure. What did I say on the rating sheet? I'm trying to remember. I think I put it on the fence. But I think I'm going to go important. So there's a couple things. One is, let me get back to the article here. One of them is that it gives this example. It says, for instance, when asked whether the statement "the legal and social privilege of Turkish citizens in Germany, in some cases their relatives in Turkey, must be ended" is true, Commandar said that it wasn't true. Gemma refused to answer, and Lama said that it was true, right? And I think the fact that it's getting into really, really material examples and that it's showing you exactly what was said and how different these answers are is really valuable insight into the importance of this issue. I actually just saw on Twitter today some people, X now, were posting today about Copilot and one other model. They were asking it who won the 2020 US presidential election, and it was refusing to answer. Right. So this is a very significant topic, and the extent to which these things refuse and or come up with very disparate opinions, I think is important, and this article does a good job of highlighting it. What was having me bump it down to optional was the fact that, in spite of their mentioning the 2024 ACM Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency Conference, when I went to their website and I went to all of the published articles for 2024, I couldn't even find this. So if you actually want to go look at the study, I don't know how you're going to be able to find it, which was a bit frustrating for me that they talked about this publication, but they don't actually provide any way to reference to it, which some ways made this a less valuable article to me.
Yes.
But I think, David, you make some really good points, and I think I'm going to go vote in on important.
Okay, we will go in on important. See, I feel like we are doing what we've discussed that we do, and we need you to analyze the data, Adam, now that we have a database of all our past ratings to confirm, do we get more importance and essentials toward the end of the week? We've got a bunch of importance today, but I do think is an important one. So we will mark it as that, and we will move on to the next one as we give folks a chance to see one of our faithful listeners, Ashish, and what he's got to say about the last article.
Yeah, he's saying it's probably, most of the time, it's probably not the underlying model, but the content moderation guardrails. And that's absolutely right, because ChatGPT would answer the question about the 2020 election, but Copilot would not, right? And they're using the same model under the hood. So he's spot on there with that comment.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have just one more.
Yes, David. So the last one talks about how GenAI is helping a French retailer enhance shopping experiences for their customers.
This is a super, super brief article, and it is a shopping assistant. This is for a company in France that sounds like it's somewhat like a Home Depot of France. And the model will help customers kind of talk through what they want to do with their house and repairs and help them make decisions. Talks about how the consumer has so many options right now that a lot of times on the websites that, like an Amazon, that, you know, give you 500 different paper clips that you can get or something, that people get overwhelmed and they actually just jet and they say, I can't deal with this. And these shopping assistants look like they are starting to actually help people make decisions and to the benefit of the companies make purchases. It's so brief, it made me want to just put it as important so that you can take a look and see that these, if you're a retailer, that it seems like companies are getting good results with these. You know, it talks about how it does provide other data that helps them figure out how to optimize their website and such. And it's super short. I don't know. I can be on the fence on this one, though. I'll let the two of you jump in here and tell me what you think.
For me,
go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. I was just gonna say, for me, a lot of times when I hear use cases, I'm consistently on the fence, because I'm like, if you're in retail, it's important. If you're not, it's not. You know, one of those kind of things. So I'm constantly on the fence of, is this optional or important because of a use case? And you know, pretty much when we're out there speaking to business leaders, what do they want to hear in their industry? A use case. So it's like, typically just for that in itself, I'm typically on the important camp. But again, it's a retail use case. So Adam, I'd say you're going to have to break the tie on this one. I'm not sure.
I found it quite optional. I'll just say that much. It seemed almost like a commercial for their product. It didn't go into any detail about how it was built, what model it's using. And it's basically like, wow, someone has a chatbot on their website that uses an LLM. That's pretty much what the article is highlighting, is that one retailer in France is using an LLM for a chatbot.
Yeah, I hear you. The only reason I was like, well, maybe, was because it did talk about the results and some of the knock-on effects of putting the shopping assistant in there, as opposed to just what it was doing. But I certainly didn't have a strong opinion on that at all. So I will back you on the optional, and we'll go optional on that one. Okay, so on this Friday, let's see what we ended up with. I feel like we had at least a few importance. We'll wait till Ankaj can pull up our summary here. All right. So where did we land? Oh, that's right. We went essential. We had one essential today. And I know we marked those previous editions as important, but again, I would really encourage the AI leader to read the entire series this weekend. It's the best you're going to get, I think, in terms of what it looks like on the ground, but not from a developer perspective. And I just think there's going to be some value in there for you. And this one is certainly essential because, as we talked about, it's on the strategy. You are the AI leader. You are in charge of that strategy. So helpful nuggets in there. We have Ethan Malik, important. That's the doing stuff with AI edition, and the study on bias we also marked important. The other ones are optional, but of course, if you got some time this weekend, as our John Sviokla says, billionaires read a lot. Anything that you all want to share before we close out the weekend? All right. Silence is golden. Thanks, everybody, for joining this week, and we will see you on Monday. Have a really great weekend. Bye.